Alright guys, in today's video we have some, in my opinion, very important information to go over and talk about when it comes to the PlayStation 5 and how Sony plans to handle the next generation in general, because GamesIndustry.biz released an interview that they did with Sony's Jim Ryan, where Jim Ryan gave some pretty interesting answers to some of the questions that he was asked, and I think it's a clear indicator of a few things. First of all, it seems like everything is still proceeding smoothly. There's no major interruption to their next generation plans when it comes to both releasing the console and releasing the games alongside the console. And even more importantly than that, Jim Ryan touches a little bit on PlayStation 5 exclusives and whether or not they're going to be cross-gen and whether or not they plan to kind of follow Microsoft's lead on this one. And I do find it pretty interesting because this is something that some people still are on the fence about. Like, they don't know, is Sony planning to kind of do the same thing that Microsoft is, where for the first year or two all of their exclusives will be cross-gen with the PS4? There's some people who tell you, yeah, that makes 100% sense that they would do that, and there's other people that say absolutely not. Sony's never really been known to do that, and they're not going to start now. And I think Jim Ryan, while he doesn't give us a direct answer, like right on the nose, I think he makes it pretty clear what we can expect in terms of how they're going to handle this. So these are all things we're going to be taking some time to talk about here. So before we go any further, if you could do me a big favor and make sure you hit the like button to help the video out and show your support, and hit the subscribe button as well so you don't miss any future content. So as I said, we're talking about the exclusivity of PlayStation 5 games. Like, what is their plan? How are they going to handle this? And this is what the article says. And I do want to let you know we're not going to be going over the entirety of this article because it is very lengthy, it's very long. I do have a few bullet points with some interesting quotes that I want to highlight, but it will be linked down below so you can read the entire thing for yourself if you're interested in doing that. It says here, though, one way to keep PS4 users engaged would be to make upcoming PS5 games playable on the older machine, just like Microsoft is proposing with its Xbox Series X games being playable on Xbox One. Yet, Ryan says that's not something PlayStation is interested in doing. And this is what he's quoted with saying: "We have always said that we believe in generations. We believe that when you go to all of the trouble of creating a next-gen console, that it should include features and benefits that the previous generation does not include, and that, in our view, people should make games that can make the most of those features. We do believe in generations, and whether it's the DualSense controller, whether it's the 3D audio, whether it's the multiple ways that the SSD can be used, we are thinking that it is time to give the PlayStation community something new, something different that can really only be enjoyed on PlayStation 5. So there you go. I mean, it doesn't really get any more clear-cut than that. When I said earlier that he didn't answer it directly, it's not like he literally said, no, we will not be releasing any games on the PS4. Every PS5 exclusive will only release on the PS5. He's not saying it in that way. But if you look at what he's saying here, he's making it crystal clear, in my opinion, that games that are going to be exclusive to the PlayStation 5, one of their main goals, and I talked about this at length before, but we're just kind of seeing it backed up here, one of their main goals is to take full advantage of the features and benefits that the new console is going to offer. And if you pay attention to what he says here in the second part of his quote, where he says whether they're talking about the DualSense controller, so obviously they have a bunch of new features in the DualSense controller that are not on the DualShock 4, so they want to take advantage of that. Whether they're talking about 3D audio, we know that they have a Tempest engine completely dedicated to audio, so there's that. But most importantly here, he talks about whether it's the multiple ways that the SSD can be used. Now, this is so important to me because there have been people who've tried to tell me that even if Sony doesn't put their games as cross-gen titles with the PlayStation 4, they're still going to build them for PC and with PC in mind. And the fact that Jim Ryan here is highlighting the multiple ways that they can use the SSD, he's clearly referring to either their first-party studios or their partner studios. And yeah, that's the thing about Sony's SSD here inside the PlayStation 5, is it can be used in multiple different ways, and it can actually, for exclusive PlayStation 5 games, in some cases, depending on what the developer chooses to do, fundamentally change the game itself and fundamentally change some aspects of game design. And so when he says here that they're thinking it's time to give the PlayStation community something new, something different, and that can really only be enjoyed on PlayStation 5. He's talking about exclusive games. He's talking about games from their first party studios that will be able to take full advantage of all these feature sets. And look, in my opinion, Sony and Jim Ryan have already made it pretty clear, at least to me, that their goal is to try to really sell this thing and sell it at a fast pace and get people to upgrade very quickly. And in my opinion, it seems that they are well aware, and this has always been my mindset, they are well aware that having exclusive games to just that console will be probably the most effective way to get at least a large chunk of the gaming community to go out there and buy one, right? It's a very big difference between if every game they show off, they tell you it will be cross-gen with the PS4. A lot of PS4 owners are suddenly going to have be a lot less interested in upgrading to the PS5, and there's multiple benefits to this. It's beneficial for Sony because it's going to allow them to incentivize gamers a lot more than they would be able to with these exclusive games to go out and buy one. But it's, believe it or not, I know there's people who are going to try to say, well, exclusives are bad. In this case, they're not, because you look at the way the PlayStation 5 console is designed, and knowing that developers will, at least the ones who are making exclusive games for the PS5, can take full advantage of that. And if you're somebody who's going to buy a PS5, you can look forward to that. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I fully anticipate that some of the games we see on the PlayStation 5 are literally going to be able to achieve things that cannot be achieved on any other platform or any other machine. I firmly believe that. And what Jim Ryan is saying here kind of backs that up. So had to take time to mention that here. And so, as I said before, as I predicted, as I've speculated, you know, people always ask me, what do you think the biggest difference between these two consoles is going to be? Like, what is the difference between the PlayStation 5 and the next generation Xbox? And, you know, what's going to cause a separation between them? In my opinion, this is it right here. The exclusive games. The fact that Sony is willing to do this as they've always done and stick to it and stick to their guns, to whereas Microsoft is all about, well, you know, we're going to allow all of our games to be cross-gen for quite some time. And that's fine, but that's where the difference is. So we spent a lot of time on that single quote, but again, I thought it was the most important. And so there's a few other quotes here I do want to highlight. One of the quotes is him kind of answering the question about the global launch. Does Sony still plan to do a global launch, and has everything that's been going on in the world these past couple of months affected the launch of the PlayStation 5? And this is what he said: I think most businesses would find themselves challenged with the working from home environment, and I do think the way that various groups within PlayStation have responded has been magnificent. There are the hardware engineers who are having to work without being able to get into China where PS5 will be assembled. That's kind of tough. The software engineers who are building these great features, who are building a great PlayStation 5 UI, some of that can be readily done in isolation, but when it comes to putting it all together, that's not easy to do remotely, and they're doing a great job. And finally, the people who make games. We and our partners seem to be coping really well, and so we are on track. We are going to launch this holiday, and we're going to launch globally. We're really looking forward to it, and it's going to be a blast. So that's pretty important, because he's just nipping it in the bud, saying that, look, like, yeah, it's been a challenge, but as of right now, everything is still on track. The console is set to launch at the same time that they had always planned, and it's going to launch globally. And he does hint here at the end that there's been basically no issues with them or their partners when it comes to game production. So another really interesting quote here that I think maybe gives us a little bit of a subtle hint about the price of the PlayStation 5, because this is something we're all still trying to gauge. Is it going to be $500? Is it going to be $450? Is it going to be lower than $450? He was basically asked how Sony plans to effectively sell the PlayStation 5 at the pace and scale that they want to achieve, which, if you go by what Jim Ryan said in the past, which is they want to try to achieve the fastest pace that they've ever achieved with any console generation. How are they going to do that during a time of a recession? And he was highlighting that during this time, with everything going on, everybody being in lockdown, gaming has actually seen a huge surge, not just in software and people buying games and spending more time on the network, but even going out there and buying consoles. And he expressed, a lot of surprise with that, saying how basically during a time when people are basically not allowed to go out to stores and buy things that are not considered essential, they were very shocked to see just how many PS4s they were able to sell. And so this is what he actually had to say. He says, I think the best way that we can address this, when talking about being able to sell the PS5 at the fastest possible pace, is by providing the best possible value proposition that we can. I don't necessarily mean lowest price. Value is a combination of many things. In our area, it means games. It means number of games, depth of games, breadth of games, quality of games, price of games. All these things and how they avail themselves to the feature set on the platform. And with each new generation, there's the pressure to find a large audience quickly. And so I find this interesting because he immediately points out that when he's talking about value proposition for the PlayStation 5, he's not just referring to price. And I like this because this is where I think Sony has a good fundamental understanding that it's not always about just putting the cheapest thing out there and that's going to be the most appealing to people. To a certain group it will be, but to their core audience, to the gaming audience, I think it's safe to say that most of us care more about quality than anything else. So if the PlayStation 5 is a $500 console, which I think most of us are anticipating, and I think that that's to be expected, the number one thing people are going to be looking for is, well, that is a pretty high price point, right? But what's it going to be offering me? And suddenly, if you see, as he immediately talks about games, the quality of these games, the depth of these games, the number of these games, the price of these games, the quality, all this stuff, when we see those games, suddenly the price is going to, in our minds, just go down immediately. Like, oh, all I have to do is pay $500 and I can get access to these games? Sign me up, and I like that mentality because I firmly, and I've always believed this, that people will pay for quality, right? Like, obviously everybody likes to get the best possible value, but you'll find more often than not, based off of my experience, that if you offer something that really is quality and you're gonna offer it at a slightly more, for more money or a higher price point, people will be willing to pay for that, right? As long as they feel that that value is actually there and as long as you can show them that the value is there. So I really like this answer because it clearly shows that Sony's not just trying to go for the cheapest console on the market, and I'm okay with that, but they understand that the best way to sell their console, regardless of how much it's going to be, is with the games. Again, like, these are really important things that Jim Ryan is saying, and I have to take time here to highlight this and really let you guys know, like, it seems that Sony is on point when it comes to being in touch, in my opinion, with the core gaming audience and what our expectations are when it comes to transitioning to the next generation. And so that's pretty much all I wanted to say and relay to you guys. I think that most of you should probably click on this article and read the entire thing for yourself. Again, I couldn't go over all of it here because it is pretty lengthy, but I wanted to make sure to highlight some of, in my opinion, the most important things that Jim Ryan was saying when it comes to next generation. And essentially what it comes down to is they're not going to be doing cross-gen games. They plan to have their exclusive PS5 games take full advantage of the PS5 and its features, which is awesome. They're not having any problems with production, and they are going to launch globally. They're not having any problems with production of their games, and they understand that the best way to sell their console, regardless of price, the best way to offer the best possible value proposition is with the games. So there you go. Nothing but good news, guys. So at this point, I'm going to ask you to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Again, leave the video a like if you did enjoy it or found it informative. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.